Hi, I'm Nick Maselli. At TD Bank, we believe all citizens need to be informed about the important financial issues that affect their daily lives. That's why we're proud to support programming produced by the CAUCUS Educational Corporation and their partners in public television.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Sovereign Health System, a fully integrated multi-specialty community healthcare system. TD Bank, Johnson & Johnson, QualCare Inc., a managed care company administering health plans that care about your healthcare. NJM, auto insurance, homeowners insurance, and more, with a focus on safety and financial stability. NJ Best, New Jersey's 529 college savings plan. Turn a dream into a degree. And by Verizon.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
When you first heard that they were doing Charlie Rose and Gayle King, didn't you go, what?
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
Welcome to the Tisch WNET studio here in beautiful Lincoln Center. It is our pleasure to welcome one of the greatest entrepreneurs you're ever going to find, Gary Vaynerchuk. Is the author of Ask Gary V, One Entrepreneur's Take on Leadership, Social Media, and Self-Awareness. By the way, how is it that you have 1.24 million Twitter followers? How did that happen?
First mover advantage. You know, my belief in Twitter started back in '07 when most people thought it was stupid, or more importantly, nobody had ever heard of it.
Right.
And I was in the wine business in New Jersey at the time, and I went on Twitter, and instead of doing what everybody did with Twitter, which was they talked, I listened, which meant that I searched what people were tweeting about, and anybody that mentioned the word Cabernet, Napa Valley, or Pinot Noir got a tweet from me saying, how can I help you? Or did you ever try this? And what I did was I was kind of the first listener on Twitter, ironically in the wine business of all things, and I built a lot of momentum and then started showing up on TV around it and became kind of a social media star, I guess.
Absolutely. Talk about your background in Jersey.
So it goes back a little bit even further. I was born in Belarus in the former Soviet Union, and we immigrated here to Queens, New York, and Rego Park in '78. Lived in a studio apartment half the size of this area with 8 family members. And my dad, very much my hero, got a job as a stock boy in a liquor store in Clark, New Jersey, and did the immigrant thing, which is mom and dad spent no money on anything. There he is, man. My parents spent no money on anything for a decade, which allowed my dad to buy his own store in Springfield, Short Hills, Millburn area of New Jersey, and I grew up in that shop, merchant, first generation. I always tell my buddies, I'm really living your grandfather's life, you know, because I come from a first generation background, not a third generation like so many people that are watching right now. And so at 14, on every weekend and every summer vacation, instead of doing sports, instead of doing all the other stuff, I was stocking shelves for 10, 11 hours a day. That's just what you did. And somewhere around 16, I realized people collected wine. I was a big baseball card seller as a kid. And that connection made me passionate about it. And in 1996, it culminated with me launching one of the first e-commerce wine businesses in America and building one of the largest independent wine retail shops in the country.
You know what's so interesting is, as I read about you, I'm fascinated by entrepreneurs. You know, I consider myself an entrepreneur. We have a production company. If we didn't bring in sponsors and underwriters, we wouldn't have this. And we do what we do, and you know, we struggle with it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm convinced that no matter how confident we try to be as entrepreneurs, there's an insecure piece of us that always wonders, will we succeed? But you have said that you believe that there are a whole series of myths around what it takes to be an entrepreneur, and you believe you were born to be an entrepreneur. Back that up.
Yeah, you know, it's a thing that gets a lot of people upset. And let me clarify.
Because where's the training?
Let me clarify it. I think right now in America, especially because of startup culture, because Mark Zuckerberg and Uber, that every kid in college just thinks, I'm going to start a startup, raise a bunch of money, and away we go. It's a different generation. Look, I think that everybody can have entrepreneurial tendencies. I do believe that anybody can work really hard and read business books and try and learn and train and become slightly better versions, or even sizable better versions of themselves. But listen, my man, I can go and play hockey every day for the rest of my life, could have from the beginning, and I do not think that I would be Wayne Gretzky. Nobody thinks that they can learn to be Beyonce or LeBron, but for some reason, everybody thinks they can build $1 million business. When you look at the math behind how many people actually pull off being a successful entrepreneur, it's quite rare.
But what are you saying to those people, though?
I'm saying...
You're saying lower your expectations?
No, I'm saying, look, you're more than welcome to do whatever you want, but I think if you lack self-awareness, you are putting yourself into jeopardy. I mean, there's a lot of people right now that are going to waste a lot of good formative years or lose a crap load of money just because it's cool to be an entrepreneur right now in America.
Do they even have any idea? Do you think that most people who say they want to be an entrepreneur, Gary, truly believe, truly understand what it takes to be an entrepreneur, to take on the responsibility, to be the man or the woman, with everybody else looking to them to be the rainmaker in the marketplace to do it?
You know what? To me, I don't need to, that one, I'm not sure. I think that's an individual basis. Look, I think where you're going with that is something I believe, which is, I just don't think people know how much hard work and how hard it actually is. The reason there's an insecurity for you is you know that if you don't sell the next sponsorship, this doesn't happen.
That's
like,
right.
I go to sleep every night knowing my entire ecosystem, my family first and foremost.
That's right.
The people that I really care about that become family out of friendships and working together for a long time.
And the people who count on you.
I have 650 employees at VaynerMedia right now. Like if I lose tomorrow, if I make 6 bad decisions, it's over. When you're the number 2, when you're the number 3.
Explain the difference between number 2 and 3 and number 1, because I talk about this all the time. What's the difference?
Changer. The game changer is that number 2, you're the right-hand gal of the biggest company in the world. When all the crap hits hard, you can still look and go, what are we going to do?
What's number 1?
You got to look yourself in the mirror. And it's very lonely. One of the reasons that I've been talking more about self-awareness in a business book, self-awareness.
This book is all about knowing who you are.
100%. The reason I'm saying more, not everybody's an entrepreneur, is because the dirty little secret right now is there is more depression and suicide going on amongst 20 and 30-year-old entrepreneurs in our world than anybody's talking about. Everybody's talking about the glamour of being an entrepreneur. Go to Instagram right now and hit the hashtag entrepreneur. And there's all these pictures of private jets and champagne and models, and it's so great. It's not glamorous. It's hard, and it's lonely. It's lonely. The difference between 1 and 2 is 1 has nowhere to go. It's on you. It is your fault if you win or lose.
Are you recommending that some who think they want to be the number 1 person, the entrepreneur, the person who goes out there in the marketplace, that they really take a hard look at whether they have what it takes and ask the serious question, am I better off being a support person? Am I better off being on part of the team but not being the quarterback? Because that is the implication of what you are saying.
Yes. How about that? No hedge, black and white binary.
And then turn around, I push devil's advocate, and I turn around, and there are a lot of people who are saying, hold on. Our parents have told us, and you laugh already. Our parents have told us,
because
try to be the best you can be, and don't let anybody hold you back. Who is anybody else to tell you can't be number 1?
There's a big difference. First of all, don't listen to me. First of all, any real entrepreneur that's watching me right now, like if the 14-year-old version of me was watching this 40-year-old guy,
you'd ignore you right now.
I'd be spitting at the television. Anybody that's believing me and questioning themselves,
they're not an entrepreneur.
Already in trouble. You got it. You got it. And so we're living in a world.
Don't you tell me.
Listen, it's exactly right. The market, this market outside that window, they don't care about that fact that you went to Horace Mann. They don't care that mommy was friends with the administrator at Brown and you're at this nice school. Once you hit the market, it's the market. Yeah. And so, yes, we are doing a disservice, and we're generalizing. This whole theme of helicopter parents, 8th place trophies, I generalize about it. Not everybody's doing that, but let me tell you something. Anybody that is creating fake self-esteem in their kids, and there's a big difference between fake self-esteem and real self-esteem, meaning if you're accentuating weaknesses, if you're saying to your kid who can't hit a T-ball that you're going to be Mike Trout, you're doing them a disservice.
So let me try this. You talk about legacy a
Yes.
lot. Why? In your book?
Truthfully?
Yeah.
Like since we're in this zone together right
Yeah.
now? Because I don't want to die.
Join the club.
I just
Because here's the thing. One of the things in the book that got me was the difference between clouds
and dirt.
versus dirt. And it really threw me off. I go, this guy is getting too deep for me. Clouds versus dirt. Make the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think 99.9% of people watching this right now live in the middle. And I think it's the most dangerous place to be. So, dirt, being an actual practitioner, getting your hands dirty is kind of the way I'm thinking about it. I, right now, talk a lot about social media, invest in social media, run social media for the biggest brands in the world. And even though I have a 600-person company filled with 20-year-olds through every direction, as a 40-year-old in that company, nobody actually knows how to do social media better than me. I'm a practitioner. I know every nook and cranny about Snapchat, Pinterest, Instagram right now. And so when you do something, you have to know your craft. Next, clouds. You have to know why you're doing it at the highest level. Everything else, the money, all the stuff in the middle, but at the highest level, why are you driven to do it? Right. You know why I'm so passionate about this entrepreneur thing? Because when I was getting D's and F's, and let's get to the chase, when I was getting D's and F's in high school in the 90s, when the narrative was not entrepreneurship is cool, when the narrative was going to college is the only way to be successful in America, I was told by teachers and by my friends' parents that I was a loser, even though I was making $2,000 a weekend selling baseball cards as a 15-year-old. That was considered a no, right? And so the chip that comes from you're not going to succeed and then going out and succeeding and then becoming 40 and living it for 20 years and saying, wait a minute, the world is so different than what they tell you or what they're building you for. I want people to be self-aware because I got lucky. My mom and dad, they parented me right. They made me know that there was circumstances for things that I did wrong, but they let me be an entrepreneur when it wasn't proper.
You've been very critical of higher education because of this.
Yes, they're businesses.
Well, hold on. You've said that higher education is not creating the environment that promotes the kind of self-awareness necessary for people to succeed.
In entrepreneurship.
That's all we're talking about.
So yes, do I think that it is a good idea for the following scenario? Go to Babson, which is an incredible entrepreneur college, and collect debt that you can't even bankrupt yourself out of to learn entrepreneurship. Yes, I think that's a huge mistake.
So what give 16 or 17-year-old advice right now, or his or her parents.
If they're lucky enough to have audited and realized that child is an entrepreneur for real, they should go as soon as possible and work and put it into action. The same way athletes and entertainers do.
Hold on, don't go to college?
That's right.
You can't. Listen, hold on.
Yeah.
We're in the public broadcasting world. We're in educational television.
Yeah.
We have American Graduate Day here, where our president, Neil Shapiro, and our team dedicated an entire day to promoting education, and you just said, don't go to college. I believe that there's a subset, which is the most American thing we've got, which is entrepreneurship, that is absolutely, positively in 2016 not structured to be a winning entrepreneur because of the college system. But to push back, all the research shows that a college degree produces exponentially more income for that person over his or her lifetime than not having. And this is where we're going to have such a laugh, you and I together. Go ahead. All the research funded by the people that have financial vested interest in people going to college. So you don't believe the statistics? I do not believe statistics that are funded to create a narrative that is in the best interest of the institution paying for the statistics. No, I do not. I'm a big believer that education, higher education, even if it does not produce the income and the entrepreneurial spirit you're talking about, does provide a young person with a view of the world that he or she would never have otherwise, and experiences that he or she would never have otherwise, and may in fact be priceless. I fundamentally disagree. I think that's the convenient narrative, and I think the same thing can be replicated, if not to a greater extent, if that same child spent that $45,000, $60,000 and traveled the world and worked in companies and did other things. I appreciate your point of view. Did you go to college? I did. You did. And that had no impact on your view of the world? Of course it did. I went to Mount Ida College, which was on its best day a community college in Newton, Mass.
every single kid in that school was a minority and a thug, and it made me much tougher, and it showed me a lot of parts of the world, and it brought me tremendous value. However, do I believe that same $40,000 a year could have been spent to teach me, maybe not that exact same narrative, but other things that didn't happen in mommy and daddy's house? Yes, I do. And do I also think, let me just say this punchline, do I also think that it stole 8 months of me being an operator in an entrepreneurial environment times 4 years, that I could have had more learnings in what I was destined to do, and it didn't give me as much upside? Yes, I believe that.
I'll tell you what, we're going to end on an up note. I'm a Giants fan.
This is not an up note.
I know.
This is devastating.
I don't dislike the Jets. I don't understand the Jets. And you're going to tell me in 30 seconds less why you're a Jets fan.
Because the climb is a hell of a lot more interesting than getting there.
So 1969 means what to you?
January 12th, best day. 6 years before I was born. I wish I was there. But I'll tell you this.
Go ahead.
I grew up a huge Yankees and Rangers fan, and I don't watch either anymore. Because the climb, baby. Knicks and Jets.
I'm still with the Giants. I'm still with the Yankees, but I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You gave us a lot to think about. Gary, I want to thank you for joining us. Can I plug your book again?
Please.
It's called One Entrepreneur's Take on Leadership, Social Media, and Self-Awareness. And I would argue that you're pretty damn self-aware. Thank you, brother. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Stay with us. Provocative discussion here in public broadcasting. Stay with us. We'll be right back right after this. That was great, man.
Thanks for having me.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD, and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
Back by popular demand here on public television, we have our good friend Gary Myers, author of the book Brady versus Manning, the untold story of the rivalry that transformed the NFL. Good to see you, Gary.
It's good to see you again, Steve.
Not that there's anything happening with these two guys as we are in May of 2016. So real quick, let's just do this. By the way, why'd you write the book?
Why? Because I was looking for something that was current and something that defined this era of the NFL, which has been its most popular and profitable. And these two guys, you know, for a decade and a half were the faces of the NFL. And I knew there was more to the story about them, what they just did on the field, their rivalry, their friendship, their background. It was just really a lot of compelling things.
Tom Brady, excuse me, Peyton Manning, they genuinely like each other in spite of all those games against each other.
I think all those games against each other, Steve, brought them closer together. And their relationship goes way beyond, you know, just shaking hands before and after the game. They've gotten together in the off-season to play golf. They've had dinner together at Brady's house. Whenever Peyton gets to Boston in the off-season on business, he would call Tom and say, hey, let's go out to dinner. And Brady would get his Patriot teammates to come, and they'd all go out to dinner with Peyton. Their fathers, Archie, everybody knows Archie, and then Tom Brady Sr., became texting pals. And for years, every Monday, they would text each other, hey, how'd your kid do yesterday? Everything okay? But until the Super Bowl this year that was held in the Bay Area where the Brady family is from and that the Broncos were playing in, Archie Manning and Tom Brady Sr. bumped into each other at a restaurant, and it was the first time they ever met.
First time they met. How much did they want to beat each other? Until the retirement of Manning.
More than they wanted to beat anybody else. Because there was nobody on Brady's level other than Peyton Manning, and there was nobody on Manning's level other than Brady. So a good deal of their career was going to be defined by their games against each other. And the fact that now they finished up and they met 5 times in the playoffs, which is a lot, and 17 times total, which is amazing when you consider that Marino and Elway faced each other only 3 times in their career, and 2 of them were in Elway's final season. This rivalry has really been something special.
Describe them as individuals. Peyton Manning has a ton of commercial spots, retires, right? But he has a ton of spots. Tom Brady, I don't know what to make of. We'll talk about Deflategate. We'll talk about a few different pieces of this. But what are they like personally?
Well, I think that, you know, the public persona of Peyton is this outgoing, gregarious guy, and what we know in the commercials about him and how he's got such an engaging personality. I think the private side of Peyton is very controlling.
Controlling?
Controlling. He is somewhat of a control freak, both in the way he used to operate around his team, trying to be in charge of every little detail, and then his away from the field life. I think that he's very much involved in just about everything that goes on. For example, when I asked him to be interviewed for this book, I mean, I had to go through a whole process with him before he agreed to give me some time. Tom Brady, on the other hand, I just walked up to him in training camp, and I told him what I was doing. I said, "Hey, can we get together?" He goes, "Yeah, let's just set it up."
Brady was like that?
See, the point I tried to make in the book, and what I've made in a lot of these interviews that I've done since the book came out in September, is I found them to completely different than what people's perception would be. And I knew both of them before I even started work on this book. I found Tom engaging, cooperative, always looks you right in the eye when he talks to you, is never looking around the room to see if something more important is going on. Very forthcoming. Brady. People look at him as the extension of the evil empire that Bill Belichick has established in New England. And to a degree, football-wise, that's correct, because those two guys have been together, now going on their 17th year.
That's right.
But away from the field, I found Brady to be much more, if you want to use the word, enjoyable to talk to than Peyton.
Really?
Yes.
So let me switch gears. Both of these guys, and you're going to write, you're going to have to update things.
Yeah, there'll be an epilogue for the paperback, which is coming out in August.
Okay, so here we go. Got the Peyton Manning situation, the HGH allegations that Al Jazeera put out there as we do the program. Al Jazeera is not actually in business anymore. Right.
Al Jazeera America.
Al Jazeera America, that's right. And they're the ones who did it.
Yes.
Put it out there. The person who said it, I don't know what that person's credibility is, but it was out there.
And he recanted before the documentary was even put on the air.
Okay. So, by the way, is that dead, that whole thing? Or does he have to deal with this? Well, I know he retired. Is it hanging around?
In what sense? I mean, the NFL...
His legacy.
Yeah, I was saying the NFL, they're done with Peyton.
No, his legacy.
His legacy, I really think it's going to take, Steve, I think it's going to take somebody confirming the Al Jazeera America report for this to really have any legs. Because it wasn't an established media company that, if ESPN did it, if my paper, the New York Daily News, which has done a lot of stuff on performance-enhancing drugs and been way ahead of the curve on breaking stories, if it was an organization like that, I think this thing would have had...
No one else has it. No one else has confirmed it.
That's right.
And he said this is a crock.
That's right. So now it's, do you believe Peyton with the veins popping out of his neck saying this is a bunch of garbage, or do you believe this network that's not even on this country anymore, whose chief informant recanted before it was even aired?
Who do you believe, Gary Myers?
I can honestly tell you that I would believe anything in terms of athletes doing anything to get onto the field, if you know what I mean. Like Peyton in 2011 had his 4th neck surgery, was very concerned he'd ever play again. If he did HGH in order to help the healing process, I can't say that he did because I don't know, but would I be shocked? I wouldn't be shocked at all.
He said he didn't. Do you believe him?
I do believe him only because I think that he has established credibility during the course of his career that he deserves it at this point.
So we're doing this program as we move into May of 2016. The program will air after. We try to make it as evergreen as possible. I don't know what's going to happen with the great Tom Brady, even though I'm a Giants fan here in the New York, New Jersey area. But a judge has determined, the judge determined?
It was
the NFL...
Well, it was a 3-judge panel in late April that voted 2-1 that Goodell did not overstep his bounds.
4-game suspension.
Right.
And unless I'm not understanding this, the only way that could change is if Tom Brady said, I want to go to the Supreme Court. Where does he go?
Well, he has 2 options here. The full panel, which is 13 judges on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, or the Supreme Court. But in each case, there's probably less than a 1% chance that either one of those entities would hear this case.
Okay, this is on Deflategate. Whether he was involved in deflating balls before a playoff game?
Before the 2015 AFC Championship game. But it's important to understand it at this point. The issue is not whether Tom Brady was involved in deflating footballs. The sole issue is, it's a labor issue, whether Roger Goodell was within his, acted appropriately, according to the terms of the CBA, by
the collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
And the judges said they were within their bounds.
This panel did, 2-1, voted for the NFL last September in U.S. District Court. Brady won that round, which is the reason he was able to play last season.
How does this end?
Well, unless there is a settlement somehow that Goodell says, you know what, we got the Patriots' first-round pick. We took $1 million from Robert Kraft. This thing is, you know,
the owner,
a year and a half ago. Let's call it even. Unless that happens, or Goodell reduces the suspension, Brady's not going to play the first 4 games, because I don't think this is going to wind up in court again.
You don't?
No.
And you know this guy?
I do.
His reputation matters to him?
Absolutely.
He doesn't drop it?
No. No. I don't think... this is too important to him. He's fought this for too long to just give up now.
Do you think he was in any way involved in deflating those balls, directing, implying anything in connection with those balls?
Well, here's the way I'll answer this question.
What are you running for the Senate?
No, because I want to set this up for you.
Go ahead. Got a minute left. Go ahead.
I'm a big believer in never lying to your parents, okay? I never lied to my parents. He looked his father in the eye, and he looked Robert Kraft in the eye, who he considers to be his second father, and swore to them no involvement, no idea how it happened, complete... I mean, he just completely divorced himself from it.
Did he handle this thing well?
No, I want to say I do believe him because I've gotten to know him. He did not handle it well from the beginning. He should have been more forthcoming.
He joked about it in serious situations, implied that other people, potentially ball boys, were involved. I'm not going to express my point of view. But you think that he did not do this because he did not. He promised those who he respects the most. Most importantly, go out and get Gary Myers' book, Brady versus Manning, a powerful story about rivalry and friendship. And you're welcome back on public broadcasting anytime. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, sir.
And read your stuff in the Daily News.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the CAUCUS Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Sovereign Health System, TD Bank, Johnson & Johnson, Qualcare Inc., NJM, NJ Best, and by Verizon. Promotional support provided by NJ.com, Small News, Big News, True Jersey. And by New Jersey Monthly, the magazine of the Garden State, available at newsstands. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
NJM Insurance Company has been serving New Jersey policyholders for more than 100 years. But just who are NJM's policyholders? There are medical care and emergency management providers, service professionals, men and women that move us and the goods and products we use each day, and New Jersey's next generation of leaders, the people who make our state a great place to call home. NJM, we've got New Jersey covered.